Father, how are you tonight?
Very fine, Tom. How are you?
Just the same, Father?
It's good to see you.
Yes, great to be here again. What does traditional Catholic masculinity look like? If I were to, ask you to compare and contrast that with maybe some of the modern ideals of masculinity, what does traditional Catholic masculinity look like?
What does it look like? Well, you know that God created male and female. That's a fact. And that's biology, okay? But masculinity and femininity refer not to the biology so much as to the mentality. You can have a male who is not masculine. You can have a female who is not feminine. But when we talk about masculinity, we're talking about what it is to be a man, body, and and mind, body, mind, and heart, to have the way of thinking and the way of feeling of a man, what that means, what it should be. There's always been an ideal of what it means to be masculine, and we've seen throughout history the interplay of these ideas of what it is to be virile, as opposed to what it is to be virulent, right? Virulent in the bad sense. I suppose the modern terminology would be toxic masculinity, right? This is taking more and more of the newsprint right, in our own day. But certainly the ideal of Catholic masculinity, or I should say the Catholic ideal of masculinity, could be summed up in chivalry, knighthood. We think of the knight as the ultimate warrior, right, of the Middle Ages. And he was, the mounted knight in his armor and with his weaponry, skilled in using, all the weaponry that he carried, was a formidable force to be reckoned with. And the church realizing this and the civil society realizing this knew that to be a mounted knight, a chevalier, a horseman, right, to be someone who was skilled in weaponry, owned weaponry, had the right to carry a sword, that person would have to be very reliable and trustworthy. He would have to have certain qualities of mind and heart that would enable him not only to fight battles, but to fight them honorably, and to be at the service of those who needed someone who was really dedicated to God and dedicated to his liege lord, and dedicated to protect the weak and defend the honor of women and so on. This was the mission of a knight. In fact, if we look back at the code of chivalry in the Middle Ages, we find that there are actually a number of different codes of chivalry, but they all revolved around the same thing. They all started with faith, and they all involved hope and charity, and all of the facets of charity. It comes down to, I guess, what in former times was known as a gentleman. A gentleman who had power, but he restrained that power. And his power was not for his own aggrandizement and his own glory. His power was there at the service of God and his neighbor. You might say the codes of chivalry could be summed up in the two great commandments. This was the great ideal. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with thy whole heart, thy whole mind, thy whole soul, thy whole strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. And basically, whatever it was said about the codes of chivalry, you could derive from those two great commandments. This was what it was to be virile in those days. It was like the ultimate man, the ultimate masculine man, who was not the beer-guzzling, uncouth, foul-mouthed, brash bully that sometimes passes for a man today, the type of things you might see in, I don't know, with all the trash talk on the sports field and so on and so forth. That is the opposite of what it is to be virile. In the mind of the Catholic Church, a true man has self-control. That's why purity was such an important part of the concept of manhood. Historically, in the Church, purity was a matter of self-control. And one could not call himself a man until he had mastered that self-control. And ultimately, that self-control had to do with matters of purity. Respect for womanhood, and to be at the service of the honor of woman, and the purity and the integrity of womanhood was one of the major facets of being a knight. That a man had to devote himself to that. So, in any case, again, that idea seems to have been quite lost today.
Yeah.
And the idea of manhood, you have the idea of man, the hard-drinking, hard-fighting guy, with the bevy of gals, either arm, and that's a man these days. And believe me, unfortunately, that is not what it is to be masculine, not in the eyes of the Church. That's the idea of what it is to be male. A human male was designed by God to reflect his own divine authority, motivated by love, by a genuine love. And he exercises that authority out of love, not just to glut himself and to be the lord of the manor and the king of the castle and have everybody, wait on hand and foot. That's the idea of secular marriage historically in the past, to pagan marriage. But the sacrament of matrimony, as our Lord elevated the natural institution of marriage to a sacrament, a supernatural level, gave it a supernatural power called the sacrament of matrimony. That restores it to the matter of giving life. And so a man who marries with the idea of fulfilling God's will, the primary essential purpose of marriage is to give life. As God created it, that's what's the primary essential purpose of marriage. And nowadays it seems that's the last thing that some people think about. The secondary essential purpose is that the two spouses take care of each other and take good care of each other, provide for each other, and are faithful to each other. Again, how many people do you find actually keeping that idea, if they ever had that idea, when they got married? But that's what a true man marries for. And again, he sees it as a vocation. And as a vocation, it's a life, it's a calling from God, it's a life of service to God. And every life of service is a life of sacrifice. So you find in every man who marries honorably and with honorable intentions, that is to say, to fulfill God's will, every man like that has to have kind of a knightly soul about him. He has to have something of the knight in him, that he is there to serve, defend, protect, give life, and nurture that life, and care for that life, and protect that life that he gives. And ultimately, the life that he wants to give is, in every way he can, as a father, as a husband, everlasting life. That's what he wants for his wife and his children, and for himself. And so that's the Catholic understanding of what real manhood is, what real masculinity is, what knighthood is. That's what the Church wants every man to be. Don't just be male, as the world pretends is all it takes to be a man. Be masculine, in the full sense of the word. Be what God intended you to be.
Amen. Until next time, we ask that you all remember the words of Our Lady at Fatima, to consecrate yourselves and your families to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and to pray and do penance. Thank you, and God bless you.